Well, good afternoon. My name is Todd Napier. I'm the President of Development Corporation of Knox County, but that's not why I'm here. I'm a member of the East Tennessee Quality Growth Board, as well as two of our speakers today, and I feel like David would be as well if he lived here in Knoxville. So this session is the only panel session that we have, but I think hopefully you'll learn some things about what they're doing that contribute to great communities. So I'm going to read each of their bios, and then we're going to go through their presentations and then take questions afterwards. Okay, our first speaker is going to be David Borowski. David is Assistant Director of Environmental Epidemiology Program at Tennessee Department of Health. He's a champion for healthy places that are designated, built, and maintained in support of healthy wellness. David graduated a degree in marine science from Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, did his graduate training in environmental science at Indiana University in Bloomington, and he began his career working for the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation. Todd, you'll be next. Todd is Director of Preservation and Field Services for Knox Heritage and the East Tennessee Preservation Alliance. He's a regional historic preservation organization based in Knoxville, Tennessee. He provides preservation, education, advocacy assistance in the 16-county region. Prior to Knox Heritage, he was Director of Community Development for the State of Tennessee's Economic Community Development Department and serves as the Main Street Statewide Coordinator. And he has a Bachelor of Science in Business Economics and Business Administration. And then Eric is the Director of Conservation for the Blount County Soil Conservation District. His position, the district is a nationally known organization, having secured EPA targeted watershed grant, which is only one of 12 to be awarded nationwide. Since that milestone, he successfully managed over $3 million in grant funding. He's overseen development of multiple conservation-based programs. Eric was presented the John P. Davis Jr. Memorial Vanguard Award for Environmental Excellence in 2014. He is a graduate of the University of Tennessee College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. He resides in Blount County, and he also raises livestock. So with that, David, please welcome David Borowski.
So a couple months ago, Julie came to me and said, would you come to our Quality Growth Conference? We're talking about transportation, planning, communities, and bring this health perspective, because I don't think anyone's really thought about that before. And having listened to all the presentations this morning, in the afternoon, I'm pretty sure everybody brought up health at some point in their presentation. So I think we can call that a success. It's clear that health is connected to communities. And I'm going to try to give you from the health department's perspective, how that connection is made. It's really three simple things. Put people first. It's all about people. And second, it's about active transportation or physical activity. Anything we can do in our daily lives to get more physical activity. And third, it's simply about choice. So within Tennessee, our commissioner has this plan that we use for strategic planning and our activities called the Big Three. And these are the three things that are bringing down our health rankings in Tennessee. And the first is tobacco use, second obesity, and third is physical inactivity. And overall, our state ranking it's actually improved a little bit lately, but we're still down in the last group of 43rd in the nation. So we have a lot of improvement that we can make. And how can we make some of these improvements? This slide was flashed earlier for the astute, and I'll actually spend a little time on it. This is Dr. Frieden, the director of CDC, his health impact pyramid. You may have seen him on TV talking about Ebola or Zika virus, something like that. But basically what it shows is that at the bottom of the pyramid, we get the most benefit to health, and we have the least benefit, the least effort. We don't have to climb up very high. But the higher we go up the pyramid, we have to work really hard to get to the top of the pyramid, but we actually get a very small return. So at the top of the pyramid, it's counseling and education. Everyone's probably heard before, hey, you should eat healthy and exercise. And that works for a few people, but not for most. And so we get very little impact, and it would take a lot of effort to make people get up and do something they may not be interested in doing. If we move to the middle of the pyramid, long-lasting protective interventions, that's things like vaccinations that can last a long time. Or if you came in the doors on the side, that's the Tennessee tobacco-free policy where no one's allowed to smoke, so everyone benefits. Those long-lasting protective interventions don't require as much effort, and we have a good return. We want to work all the way down to the bottom of the pyramid where we can change the context to make the individual's decisions healthy. We want to work on socioeconomic factors. We know that things like income and housing and education are directly connected to health. And that's something that health hasn't been involved with a lot in the past. It's been, go to the doctor, get treated for whatever your symptoms are. In this case, we're realizing we have to work beyond the doctor's office and out into the communities. So here's a simple graph with lots of different health outcomes on it, but if you'll focus your attention on the red or the wider line, on the vertical axis, that's the risk of disease. And so I want to get that disease risk down. Across the horizontal axis, I've got physical activity. So if I can change the physical activity in someone's lifestyle just a tiny little bit, you see how quick that red line plummets? It doesn't take much physical activity at all to improve their health. You can see there's that little curve right around the S and E in disease there. And just a little bit more physical activity, I can bring it all the way down. So all I need to do with health is include physical activity in people's daily routines, and I can achieve that little benefit that I need to really reduce their risk of disease. And if we think about health and wellness, it's connected to pretty much everything. Active transportation, how we get around, social equity, the history and culture of our areas, the economic development, data, the way that we use our land, our housing and our neighborhoods, how we preserve and conserve our lands, even the parks and greenways that we provide for people in our communities. All of these connections can lead to opportunities to increase physical activity. So we want to give people choice. They can choose to walk or to roll as they're able. They might ride a bike. Maybe they'll use public transit. Or maybe they want to drive. But anyways, it's their choice. And if we make our communities such that they can choose, as Tokes explained this morning, the closer they are, the more access, the more connectivity they have, the more likely they are to choose the healthy option. That's to somehow actively get from one place to another. And if our communities look like this, we can integrate walking, biking, transit, and cars all in one place. Now, this is downtown Nashville. Certainly, it's a great example of where this comes together, but it's not just something for the inner cities. This is Jonesboro, Tennessee, one of the oldest towns in Tennessee, and here, maybe not everybody from their rural home could walk or bike to school or to church, but at least they could come to the city center and they could park their car once and comfortably move around on foot. There's lots of shopping, lots of eating, other ways of entertainment. They could get to the library, to their government, to their church, all kind of from one place. And every county has a county seat where there's something that's like this, where you could start working on some livability improvements. So here's a call to action. This was mentioned earlier. The Surgeon General put out the call to action for walking and walkability. It says, in the great American community, every man, woman, and child can go for a walk, ride a bike, play sports, and move in spaces that are safe. So that's our goal. And the call goes on to say, ensure the places where we live and work promote walking and physical activity while leveling the playing field so that no one is left behind. So if we can do this connection through public health, through planning, transportation, and other aspects, we can achieve these goals. In fact, you may not know it yet, or maybe you've met people around you. We have people from different county and regional health departments in attendance today, so they're learning with and alongside you so that in the future they'll be as knowledgeable than when you have decisions that need to be made or you need a task force or a committee member. You'll have a local advocate for health that will be able to help you. So, to help prevent things like this, crosswalk that goes into the bushes and a lamp pole. Now, remember, somebody had to paint that, and somebody had to give orders to that worker to paint that, and somebody bought the, never mind. And some things like this. This is the Walnut Street Bridge in downtown Chattanooga. It's certainly an example of where a transportation project was turned into something that was healthy. It was an old car bridge turned into pedestrian use. There's economic revitalization on both sides of the bridge. There's certainly opportunities for physical activity and a community center. To make all of these connections to health and wellness, I'm working on a new resource that you'll all have access to in a short amount of time, unless you don't have that broadband. Yes, I was listening. The Healthy Places website. So within the government, you've heard today from transportation as well as from community development and now from health. Several different departments and others, tourism, agriculture, aging commission, is all working together to help promote these ideas. And so putting together a Healthy Places website that captures these ideas of active transportation, land use, healthy buildings, health equity, recreation, environmental quality, even getting into tools and resources and sharing your successes and helping you find those partners. And that website will have this list of resources and publications to help quickly take all of the stuff we're talking about and putting it in one place. Like, you may not know that we have this nice livability communities checklist that you could go and walk through a neighborhood and do some of this quick checklist to get an idea of how livable or how healthy that community might be. Similar but different than that walk score that was talked about earlier. There's lots of resources out there, but you may not know quickly how to find these things. And that's one of the things we want to do. Something else the health department has is a lot of data. And you may not know that we have this great set of resources called Drive Your County to the Top 10 to try to promote health and improvements in your community. And so those three things I mentioned earlier, the smoking, obesity, and physical inactivity, are all ranked for your county already in this report. So if you were working on a grant application, all you'd have to do is have to know which website link to click on, but we're going to get you there quickly so you can access this and then use these statistics in your reports or your presentations. And in the website, I'd like to have it have kind of a life of its own. So in addition to the publications and the statistics, I want to get into some opportunities for recognition, to have some kind of ongoing communications, let you know what funding opportunities are coming up. There may be places for funding you didn't even know existed. Also, what learning opportunities are out there, what conferences, what meetings, what webinars could you attend if you wanted to learn more. And that website, this is the simplest government website you'll ever get the address for. tn.gov/healthyplaces. So I've got access to this. We own it. It is not active right now. You may have heard about this thing called Zika virus or measles in Memphis. So our communications people haven't gotten through the 40 pages of new content I've submitted, but we have the website. It will exist in a few weeks to a couple months, and hopefully all of these things will be there to help you out. All right. Thank you.
Does that look right? It looks like a PDF. Okay. All right, so I think this will work okay for us. Again, my name is Todd Morgan. I work with Knox Heritage and the East Tennessee Preservation Alliance, and I have to let you all in on a little bit of a secret. I'm not really a career preservationist, so I'm just fortunate to be wearing that hat right now. Actually, as they mentioned, my educational background is all business, all the economics and marketing stuff, but I've had the good fortune to have my career path flow from architecture into urban planning, into community and economic development, into downtown revitalization, and now into preservation. And I feel very blessed to have had the opportunities to work in these different fields. I hope it's a blessing and it's just not me being non-committal to any particular career choice. But I've enjoyed it, and I'll tell you what it all has in common. The fact is, I love places. I love cities and towns and neighborhoods and even individual places. And, I'm a native East Tennessean, so I really love this area. I want it to be the best it can possibly be. So it's very important for me to be around folks like you who are working within your communities to try to do the same thing. And what I want to bring to the table by being in this position right now is to make sure that in your community, you actually have historic preservation as one of your key talking points. I know a lot of you are from different fields, and I know chambers are really busy looking at industrial development. You're looking at new roads and retail recruitment and things like that. How do you get new residents in? How do you keep young people at home or attract more young people? But if you don't have preservation as one of those subject matters that you're always kind of trying to have a focus on, you're really missing out on something that can be a great opportunity for your community, because what you're doing is you're utilizing assets that are already in place, and that's kind of a cool thing. So if this is what you think of when you think of historic preservation, I need to let you know that's not what I'm here to talk about. You know, this isn't about old museums or, you know, saving a battlefield and so forth. That's part of preservation, but it's not what's in my heart. You know, what I like to talk about is this kind of historic preservation, and that's already been alluded to by the speakers who came before me. You know, it's about how we take our downtowns and our neighborhoods and things that we have in place that are unique and make our communities authentic and real and unlike any other community anywhere else, and capitalize on that and use it in multiple ways. So when I talk about historic preservation, I'm really talking about a movement, and it's a very broad-based movement that has a lot of components to it. You know, we look at the educational impact it has in a community, we look at the economic impact it has in a community, the cultural impact, and so on. You might even phrase it this way. You might say that it's how a community takes their heritage assets and really puts them to work for the place where they are. So what makes a place historic? You know, a lot of people ask me this question, and it's pretty simple. It's basically structures that are 50 years old or older. It doesn't always have to be, but that's pretty much a common rule of thumb. And then we also look for things that are significant, like great architecture or some great event or person that's associated with the place. But the second question I have to get is, why does it really matter? You know, why do you put so much emphasis on this? Why do you fight for certain places, buildings, or even neighborhoods and towns? Why not just let the market move them in the direction they're going in? Well, you know, you've seen a lot of examples in presentations today. I know we've already heard about places like these. These folks get it, and they've been getting it for a long time. If you've ever been to Charleston or Savannah, they've been at the preservation game for a long time, and that's been very successful for them, not just from a tourism perspective, but also from a resident recruitment, you know, a business recruitment. Savannah, Georgia, you know, they're attracting a lot of young folks, young entrepreneurs into their city, and they always want to be in the historic district. That's the thing that really stands out in the studies that have taken place. And here in Tennessee, you know, you've heard Jonesboro and Franklin mentioned before because they've been at the preservation game for a long time, and it's really paid off for them. These communities get it. You know, the Rose Center up in Morristown was saved from being a parking lot, and now it's a vibrant arts and cultural center. Market Square, that was mentioned in the last presentation. It's a wonderful place. And when the New York Times writes about Knoxville, Huffington Post, Garden and Gun, you name it, they're always talking about things like Market Square, Gay Street, the Tennessee Theater, and so forth. Those are the things that stand out and make Knoxville unique in the world. These places aren't getting it. You know, you can blink your eye, and before you know it, something very important has just disappeared. Sometimes it disappears over time because people just aren't paying attention, and so they neglect taking care of it. Others, it's deliberate. They just want to demolish it and get it out of the way. And it's kind of sad because some of these buildings, you know, like the school that's in the lower, it's going to be your lower left corner, is in Dandridge. It's near downtown Dandridge. Oh my gosh, it would be such a great building to put to use as an assisted living facility or as some kind of new, you know, mixed use facility, get some young people living in there and things like that. What an asset for that town. What you don't want to have happen are things like this. This is a town in Pennsylvania, and this building started to get demolished. And what's interesting is this town actually has a pretty good track record with preservation. They have a registry that's supposed to trigger anytime somebody applies for a demolition permit or a construction permit. Somehow this house did not get listed on it, and they started tearing it down, and somebody said, hey, hold on just a second, did you know the U.S. Bill of Rights got its start here? And so now, you know, there's nothing that the city can do because they're not set up from a legal perspective to stop it, but the developer has pulled back, and he's not continuing with the demolition. But that just snuck up on everybody because no one was paying attention, and that's what happens. And often what happens also, and you've had this discussion today as well, that sometimes there's no discernment in how our communities develop. There's absolutely nothing wrong with going to a chain retailer and saying, if you're going to come to our community, your sign needs to look like this, You need to have some landscaping around this place. You know, they're coming to your community because they want to make money. They see an economic model that says they're going to make money. So they will do it if you just ask them or if you at least put the regulations in place. Cumberland Avenue is getting a complete workover, which is going to be wonderful when it's finished. It's not great fun to live through it during the process, but there's nothing wrong at all with setting standards. The higher standards you set, the better off your community will be. So we know that preservation now isn't just a theory. It's not just a feel-good thing. It actually works. And there's people across the country that have become very noted for talking about this. One is Tom Mays. We had him in Knoxville recently, and he has a blog. So if you just Google Tom Mays' blog, you can read about all of his different perspectives on why historic preservation is important to our lives. You'll read things about why beauty is important. You know, the Tennessee Theater is a beautiful place. It's one of my favorite places to go for entertainment. And we don't build things like this anymore, and it was almost demolished. The memories that places evoke. You know, this is actually a picture of my grandmother walking down Gay Street. And I love that photograph. And whenever I'm in downtown Knoxville, I think about my grandparents and places that I went to with my parents. And it's what connects me to this place. Building community, giving people places to where they can socialize and connect with each other, helping to maintain the identity that's unique to a place. Oak Ridge is a fairly young place, but they have places there that are specific to their story in the world. Telling the history about your community to school kids and to visitors. And creating experiences. You know, how can a town like Dandridge of just, 2,000 people for the most part bring in thousands of people for an event and tell their story and share their space in the world with these people? And then, of course, economics, which I'll touch on here shortly. Donovan Ripkema is a well-known speaker nationwide. He talks a lot about the data they pulled in and about how historic districts are really benefiting the communities, how they create jobs, and how they increase the tax base. But the thing is, unless our leaders in a community, the public officials, the developers, and people who are really invested in the place, understand that preservation is an important priority, it may not take root and really unfold the way it should. So the thing is, if you ask yourself what your community is thinking about as far as the top priorities, or you go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, you're probably going to hear things like this being discussed. You know, they're wanting jobs to come to the community, they're wanting new residents in the community, they're wanting to see entrepreneurs flourish, they're wanting to see tourism develop. You know, preservation has an answer for helping with all of these things, and it's often that hidden thing in the back corner of the room that doesn't jump out at you, but it's a very important thing, and it can be utilized very effectively. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of different facets to historic preservation. And so we know that this works. You can look around downtown Knoxville. You can see big investment occurring in buildings there. In places like Oak Ridge, the Alexander Inn is now a beautiful senior living facility. Over in Union County, this is the Oak Grove School. I mean, this is one of those grassroots preservation efforts where people literally brought their own jacks to jack the building up to make repairs. I think they had around 30-plus jacks. So imagine that, everybody just pitching in whatever's in their trunk or their garage. Down in Sweetwater, taking those old metal fronts off of buildings, it's a scary thing. I talked to this lady who was terrified about seeing what was underneath that metal, and she's just thrilled to death, at what she has now. And here in Knoxville, we've studied the 100 block of Gay Street, and if you look at that building by building, and you look at the pre-development appraisal value for the property and the post-development appraisal value, in the end, you're going to see that before development on that block occurred, you had appraisal values just over $2 million. When all of that development finished, almost $19 million. And yeah, the city put in some money for the streetscape improvements, and they developed pilot and TIF programs. But in the end, you've just increased your tax base significantly by making those improvements. And it's just beautiful, and it's what people want to see when they come here. So what we've tried to do to help within the region, to help people understand the importance of preservation and to help you know how to really put it to work, is we're developing a toolbox. It's called the Places Toolbox. That's a term I just have kind of fallen in love with. Actually, in our case, this is an acronym, and every letter stands for something. And what it stands for are the 6 key ways you can put preservation to work in your community. So we know that you really have to build strong partnerships to be effective with preservation. You really have to foster local leadership within your community that understands it and values it and wants to pursue it. You have to advocate for it and educate the public about it. collaborate with people wherever possible, and develop strategies that really actually work for any individual site, because every property is unique. Situations can be very complicated. You're dealing with private property. So you can't just wave a magic wand. You have to really get creative with how to approach these. And so what we're trying to do with this toolbox is put in one place online all of the things that we have seen that are used effectively around, the state, around the country, but things that would specifically work in East Tennessee and would specifically work within your community. Because our goal is to get all of the 16 counties on the same page. So if Sweetwater's doing something great, we want Morristown to know about it. And if Wartburg is doing something great, we want the folks in Norris to know about it, and Maryville, and so forth and so on. And everybody has their own thing going on, and everyone has something you can learn from. So if you go to knoxheritage.org, you'll see under the Regional Alliance section of our website a link to this toolbox, which is being built right now in live time. And what you'll find there is that we are targeting 4 key end users with this toolbox. So we're targeting government officials or people who work in local government, developers, private property owners, and this can include farm owners, and also community organizers. So folks who are wanting to figure out how to save a downtown or save a neighborhood, those are the folks that we want to target with this. And within it, you're going to find several different things, and I actually took that out for time. But when you go to the website, you're going to see that there's a little brief introduction to the tool. So the tool might be a National Register district. There'll be a little brief one-liner that tells you what it's for, a couple of paragraphs at most that give you a brief overview of what that's about. But embedded within that paragraph are all kinds of links to more in-depth information. So you can go as far as you want, or if you just want a brief overview so you can start talking about it to individuals, we've got that set up for you that way. And then you can scroll down and you can see strategies that are working. So you can see that Morristown has been going through the National Register nomination process. If that's something your community wants to do, you can call them and find out about it. If you're wondering how a historic zoning commission works, you can talk to the folks in Sweetwater and see what they're doing. So we want to connect you to the things that are working and taking place in our region. And then finally, if there's other things that we have found that we think would be useful, we'll put that in there. But the biggest part of it is that we want to connect you to those partners who can help you, whether it's the East Tennessee Preservation Alliance, or the Tennessee Historical Commission, or the East Tennessee Development District, or the National Trust, or any other organization that might be helpful. We will help you find those people and start communicating with them. So I'm really excited about this. There hasn't been anything like this in our region before. I'm getting a lot of feedback from people, believe it or not, in other states who are excited about our little toolbox here in East Tennessee. And this has been made possible really through the National Trust and a grant from the Richard and Julia Moe Family Fund. So we're very appreciative of that. And if I can answer any questions about this toolbox, I've got cards and things out on the front table, and I'd love to tell you more about it and see how we can help you implement it in your own community. Thank you.
All right, well, good afternoon. Again, my name is Eric Henry. First, let me say I just want to thank all the sponsors that made this event possible. I've just thoroughly enjoyed the presentations today. I work for a conservation district. My job is to sustain and improve the natural resources within Blount County. I do not work in a vacuum. I have the privilege of working with multiple organizations, geologists, soil scientists, professional engineers. I'm not that smart, so I get to tap into their expertise. We provide technical assistance to agricultural, suburban, as well as public land users. My topic today is on outdoor environmental learning areas. These are sites that are located in natural or ecologically planned habitats. An outdoor environmental learning area can simply be a raised bed garden on a school campus. It can include woodland areas. You can create a geology site on that particular campus. Even a sundial in a school courtyard can serve as an environmental learning area. My personal definition is a campus-wide landscaping plan designed from ecological perspectives. Several years ago, the principal of Carpenter's Elementary School, Mr. Fred Goins, This school is located in a rural area of Blount County. He was telling me about this 16-acre site adjacent to the school. It's actually part of the school's property. The site was in a heavily forested condition. It contained a perennial stream, a natural spring, a true wetland, and even a cattail marsh. And I said, hey, that has potential. I then contacted my colleagues with the University of Tennessee Environmental Landscape Design Laboratory. They teach landscaping specialists environmental and ecological concepts, and not all landscaping specialists have that type of training. So they created a concept or master plan of this 16-acre site. They identified where walking trails could go. We identified both natural as well as built features, including ponded wetlands, successional forest, other reading circles, science stations. Our primary challenge for this site was just gaining access to it. This site had not been managed in probably a 20-25 year time frame. Fortunately, we're able to scrape up a little bit of grant funding and implement phase one of a loop trail system. The loop trail system consists of a gravel base capped with chat, which is very fine rock. This makes it ADA compliant. We were able to implement an upland meadow, also known as a native prairie. Reading circles and science stations have been constructed. We are also able to implement a ponded wetland. We built the levee for this wetland out of soil material that was donated off-site. We had it brought in via trucks that were also donated, and then we had a local contractor to actually build this levee for us. This was a $40,000 project that we got done for free. And I mention that because we have community support behind these projects. When you watch the students go through this 16-acre site, particularly the first graders, you know, the teachers are asking them to describe what colors do you see, or describe the shapes that you see. And they take what they learn out in the natural environment and they incorporate that into their English, mathematical, and science curriculums. We're just not teaching environmental education. These kids are learning how to learn. We have additional features planned, including a kid-sized bird's nest. We'll be able to teach about ornithology and, tree canopies and, multiple of environmental topics. This 16-acre site contains well over 22 subhabitats, everything from forest ecology to wetlands to outdoor recreation, entomology, litter lessons, soil science. Each environmental topic or subhabitat contains educational signage. The signage describes what that habitat is, perhaps what species live in that habitat. And on the bottom part of that sign, those squiggly little lines, those of you that are computer literate know that those are QR codes, quick response codes. Apparently, if you are a fourth grader, you are somehow entitled to a smartphone. The kids can then take their smartphones, they scan the QR code, it links them to the school's website for additional learning content just on that particular habitat. The teachers can also scan that code. There will be a sublink for a dedicated lesson plan. These lesson plans, we originally were going to design them to meet the TCAP protocols. Then we said, no, Tennessee Ready has now replaced TCAP. Give it another year or two, Tennessee Ready will be replaced by something. So we are preparing dedicated lesson plans for each of these habitats. Carpenters Elementary conducts 2 science days per year. They bring in volunteers to help pull off this science day. These volunteers are not only from governmental entities, but private engineering firms and just other individuals with science backgrounds. They interviewed a couple of the fourth graders, and I love these quotes. "I love seeing animals and learning about them. Not to mention nature makes me feel relaxed and rested. I write better stories, especially about nature, when I'm out here. It's just more fun than being in a classroom. We get to see animals instead of four walls. Plus, today is a whole day about science. Birds, bones, rocks, trees, and water creatures. That's awesome. This was not my interpretation of school when I was in fourth grade. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the project partners involved for this site. This is the short list. Everybody from our local stormwater department, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Billy Mincer, who is a retired professor of UT Forestry, Wildlife and Fisheries. He is a nationally known educator. Foothills Excavation Company, many, many others. Now then, you have a 16-acre site that's already in a naturalized state, but perhaps your school is more similar to Eagleton Middle School. Eagleton Middle School is located in a densely populated area of the county. Perhaps your school's playground is devoid of vegetation, like many other schools. Perhaps the infrastructure around that school is crumbling. At this site, we are implementing urban and suburban best management practices. These practices, again, I reached out to my colleagues with the University of Tennessee Environmental Landscape Design Lab, and they created a campus-wide plan that in time hopefully will transform this campus into a living laboratory. We were able to take a detention basin, phase one. We are turning this into an enhanced wetland. We have now planted over 50 native trees and shrubs. There will be a boardwalk out into this wetland area that the middle school students can access to conduct their science experiments. The walking trail throughout this project will involve both the chat I mentioned earlier as well as pervious pavement solutions. Rain gardens, which are shallow depressions that capture that first inch of stormwater runoff and provide additional filtration. Pocket woodlands, which are what they sound like. These are densely clustered layers of trees and shrubs. They basically mulch themselves, and they provide additional infiltration. I want these students to realize what non-point source pollutants are. And as our counties and cities continue to grow in population, we need to be teaching these principles now rather than later. The take-home messages from both of these sites. I want these kids to tell the parents, hey, mow your yard at a height of 3 inches. Capture that first inch of rainfall. I want them to understand where nutrients come from and what they can do. I want them to learn how to take a soil test before they over-fertilize their yard. I want them to learn not to put stuff down storm drains. I want them to learn about pathogens. And this slide came from Ruth Ann Hanahan with the UT Water Resources Research Center, so I stole that from her. Prescription drug disposal. Let's not go down that road. I want these kids to learn that if their parents or grandparents have unused medications, they need to take them to a dedicated site like your justice centers so these prescription medications can be incinerated. Folks, it's only been 10 to 15 years ago that we were still telling people to flush these pills down the commode until some, smart person got to thinking, these are prescription medications. They have biochemical properties. I wonder if they could possibly impact all the macroinvertebrates and eventually us as part of the watershed cycle. These outdoor environmental learning areas improve water quality. They decrease maintenance costs in terms of weekly mowing, weed eating, and leaf blowing. They provide hands-on environmental education. They improve campus aesthetics, and they provide a hub for increased community support, and I think a hub for green infrastructure as well. I think there are definite ties between these projects and many of the ideals discussed today. So those are the positives. What about the negatives? These maintenance costs I referred to, native plant communities, they are not maintenance free. They require some specialized maintenance over time. I'm from an agricultural background, and those of us from farming backgrounds often say that today's population is 3 or possibly even 4 generations removed from the farm. When you watch the kids walk through these sites, it is obvious that we are 3 and 4 generations removed from the environment, and so are their teachers. And so now we're considering bringing in certified outdoor educators to not only train the teachers, but provide kind of turnkey lesson plans that utilize these sites. I think that's all I've got. Thank you. I will be around.
All right, so we'll take questions. All right, I'll ask one. Let's made them up. David, so talked about one of the big things in planning, obviously these days, is how to build and design healthy communities. Do you have some examples across the state where you've seen some things that have been done either up front or retroactively to deal with healthy design to address some of the health issues? Oh, okay. Or if you want to spin it in something else, we're good.
Is this on? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, that's a whole nother great presentation that we could do, but there are certainly examples. I love the Walnut Street Bridge in Chattanooga. If you haven't been to Chattanooga downtown and seen the revitalization there, go and check that out. There's a TDEX Sustainable Transportation Awards are going on in May, so you have an excuse to get down there in May for that meeting and check out Chattanooga. We have examples in urban settings like Chattanooga, but even suburban and rural settings. I was over in McKenzie, Tennessee, and West Tennessee earlier this year, and they had a theater. We've heard different talks about theaters getting torn down, and these old theaters were once a meeting place for that community. And in McKenzie, they have nearby, I think it's Bethel College, and at the college, the students didn't want to go all the way to Jackson for their entertainment. They wanted something that was closer that they could afford to do. And so by revitalizing this theater, they provided something for the college students to be able to walk to and to, hang out, go out on dates, which also then is helping revitalize their downtown areas. So there's examples, there's a couple, and as I'm developing this website, I really want to highlight success stories. So I plan on contacting folks to learn about how to, do green classrooms and how to get preservation tools connected so that all of these examples can be shared and kind of archived. So when you're looking for these resources, we can get these to you. And my big one, I guess I'll do a little self-promotion, but we're going to do a rural livability task force or summit in Northwest Tennessee in June. And so what I'm trying to do is have a meeting like this where the different counties are around the table together, and at lunch, to get a free lunch, they have to work together and come up with a project that they can do in their community that requires a before and an after image. And we plan on putting those together and sharing you with all of the successes they've had this year with you next year. So we'll have those and more.
Thanks. Questions, anybody? All right.
Are there any examples around the region where, other than the native habitats, you try to teach the students about the agricultural history of the region and what kind of crops were grown or maybe grown in the schoolyard?
That's actually one of the topics. The question was, are there examples across the region in terms of agricultural history, and I think in a broader term, land use history, and that is certainly going to be implemented on both sites. Recently, we met with representatives from Maryville College, and I think over time, we may be able to adopt several of these practices from the Maryville College campus, but we're also considering regional farm-to-table marketing partnerships. So really expanding that campus for further outreach into the community.
Great. Yes.
I don't really have a question, it's more of a comment. I wanted to thank Eric Henry for bringing stormwater into this discussion. I didn't hear a lot about stormwater management, and I this is kind of something that hasn't really been talked about during this conference, but I think it's worth mentioning. The Tennessee Stormwater Association is just outside the door, and I'm a representative of the Tennessee Stormwater Association, working on stormwater. And I think that low impact development, managing stormwater can help drive some of these initiatives, and that it deserves a mention that we need to be more focused on managing our stormwater as we develop our communities.
Your stormwater colleagues are often discussed in varying lights, but you all you all will play and do play a critical role in the livability of our communities from here on out.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have kind of a question for Todd. I was thinking about UT and how they decided to get rid of the UT Student Center and rebuild it. This is sort of a question about the UT Student Center. I guess I was wondering, how do you approach conversations with, say, the university or entities like that surrounding buildings of that sort, or what kind of conversations did you have?
Oh, well, I tell you what, I get to work within the regions, so probably, Kim Trent, who's our executive director at Knox Heritage, had more internal discussions with UT. The thing with a public body like the University of Tennessee is they're exempt from so many things that a local community can do. So a local community can establish a historic district and they can set certain standards, but as a state university, they don't have to meet those. So what you have to do then is kind of approach them as a partner and say, let me show you how maybe saving this is in your best interest. Let us help you find some solutions that might be an alternative to losing that. Because to really go after somebody and just be combative and to try to shame them and just, that's not a good way to build a relationship with someone. And you don't want to damage those relationships because there may be saves in the future, even if you've lost some things in the past. So even though we're not always happy with things that we've seen happen on the UT campus, they've also partnered with us on other things. We've had a house moved, we've had an open house recently, just last year, to show off a property that they have. That they're trying to find a new use for, and they let us have a members-only event there. So they're very cooperative. It's just their vision may not equal our vision, but what you do is you keep that door open and you try to have those conversations, and you just treat each other as respectfully as you can in that process. And find good examples, what other places have done. That's very important.
Other questions? Everybody tired? Okay. Monty? I think that wraps up, so we'll give our speakers another round of applause, please.